So I'm currently working on a project, which I hope to be able to talk about soon. But while working on that project, I ran into an issue where I needed to be able to control the volume of multiple soundscapes using a single UI slider in real time. And after a little bit of trial and error, I was able to get this resolved using the audio modulation plugin. And also a huge shout out to Curtis Smith from my Discord server for pointing me in the right direction. Speaking of Discord, if you'd like to be a part of the Sound Effects Guy Discord server, you will find a link in the description below. And make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, so before we dive into getting the audio modulation plugin set up, let's take a look at the example that we're going to be using just so we have some context. So right now I'm just using the standard first person template. I do have an audio asset in here already. This is some music that I currently have set to not activate on begin play, just a lot of audio to try and talk over. But I do have a soundscape set up for our ambience. I've got some footsteps to the character, and then we've got the first person rifle firing sound. And so when I hit play, you can hear that the soundscape is running, and I do have a very generic UI set up with a slider for music, sound effects, and ambience. Obviously in the editor it doesn't scale properly, but yeah, that's whatever. Now you can get as granular as you want with this, you know, when it's finished. If you want to be able to have a separate slider for footsteps versus the gun firing sound, you can most certainly do that. But just for this example, I'm just going to use 3 different categories. And while I started this video talking specifically about soundscapes, once we're finished, you'll actually be able to apply this to any type of audio that is in your project. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to enable the plugin, which you can do by coming up here and clicking on settings and go to plugins, or if you go under edit, you'll find the plugins here as well. And you can use the search tool to look for audio modulation, or you can come under the audio category here and you'll find it right there. Now, like with most plugins in Unreal Engine, when you select it, you're going to get this notification down here at the bottom that you have to restart the engine. And so we're going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. So now that we have our audio modulation plugin enabled and our engine restarted, inside your content browser, I already have a folder set up for modulation. You can set your folder hierarchy up however you want. But now if you right click inside your content browser and you come under audio, you will now see the option for modulation. Now inside the modulation submenu, you're going to see several different options. In this video, we're specifically going to be taking a look at the control bus and the control bus mix. I'm not going to be diving into the generator, parameter, and patch in this video. But if that is something that you'd like to see me cover, let me know in the comments and I'd be more than happy to dive a little bit deeper into that. But really for now, I just want to make sure that you guys can get up and running with the audio modulation plugin. So we're going to start by creating a control bus, and the documentation from Epic Games suggests calling this CB, if I can type, underscore main. And to be completely honest, for naming conventions, I think this is perfect. And so what we're going to do is we're going to open up our control bus main, and we've got a couple different options, one for our mix override and for our generators. But what we're looking for right now is the parameter. And under parameter, we're looking for volume. Now, if you don't see this, you may need to click on this little gear icon and show engine content, which is off by default. So you may get this no results. If that's the case, again, just click on the little gear and show engine content. And like I said, we're looking for volume. Now we can go ahead and save this, and we're going to close out of that window. I'm going to move this back out of the way, and we're going to come into our project settings. Over on the left, we're looking for audio, and for default sound class, we have our master sound class. We're going to go ahead and double click on this. And in the left details panel here, I've already got mine expanded, but you should have this drop down for modulation and an option for volume. Yours is probably going to start out looking like this. We just need to check this tick box next to modulate. We're going to add an element, and that is going to be our control bus main. So now we can go ahead and close that, and after we save it. And once we've saved that, we're also done with our project settings, and we can close that window. Back over in our content folder, what we're going to do is we're going to take this control main, and we can do Control D to duplicate it. And I'm going to call one MUS for music, duplicate it again, and this will be sound effects, and one more for our ambience. And we can just go ahead and save all of those. And now we need to create our control bus mix. So again, we're going to right click, audio, modulation, and control bus mix. You want to call this CB underscore mix. You can name it whatever you want, just so long as we're kind of keeping track. It's especially important that we keep track of the names that we called our individual control buses, because that is something that we're going to be utilizing in just a moment. But now that we have our mix set up, actually just for the sake of naming, I'm going to call this CBM for control bus mix. And we're going to go ahead and open it up. Once our control bus mix is open, we're going to be taking a look at the mix stages. And since I have a control bus for music, sound effects, and music, we're going to go ahead and add 3 elements here. And we can go ahead and expand these. I do apologize if you're hearing a bunch of thunder in the background. There's a thunderstorm going on right now. But in our buses, we're going to select everything that isn't our main. So we've got our ambience, we've got our music, and we have our sound effects. So we can go ahead and save this. And I'm just going to move this window out of the way because we are going to come back to it. But once we have our control bus mix set up, we now have to assign our individual control buses to the actual audio assets themselves. Now, one of the cool things about this is you can apply this to a meta sound, a sound cue, or an individual wave asset. It doesn't matter. But the way that we're going to set this up, I have meta sound set up for the Soundscape, because you'll notice if we come into where I have my soundscapes, our Soundscape palette, we do have the different volumes for the colors. The issue that I was initially running into is that while I can adjust these parameters, they don't happen in real time. Instead, the adjustment will take place once the next instance of that color is spawned. And that's not quite what we want. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with our music. And I've got the meta sound already for the music. And you'll notice it's just a generic meta sound setup. I've got the music in here. We've got a wave player. But if we come up here to the top and we click on source, you're going to see the same modulation kind of menu that we saw in our master sound class. Now, chances are yours probably looks like this with everything set to inherit. But under the volume routing, what we want to set this to is union. We're going to select the tick box next to modulate. And just like we did in our master class, we're going to hit the plus to add an element. And since we're working with music, I want this control bus to be music. You can go ahead and save that, and I'll move it back out of the way. And we need to do this now. This is kind of the tedious part. We need to do this for every sound asset that we're going to be using. So since I've got the music done, we can come in here to sound effects. I've got our footsteps, and again with a meta sound. Another kind of general setup. At first, I was using a mono mixer because I was trying to use the slider to adjust just the specific footstep meta sound in real time. To be completely honest, we actually don't even need that. So we can run this straight out. And again, under our source, make sure it's set to union. The modulate tick box is checked. And for this, we're going to add it to sound effects. Now, like I mentioned previously, we can actually apply this to wave assets themselves. So under our content, go into our first person weapon. Your locations may be different, but if we use just a regular single sound asset, you'll see that we also have the modulation here. And we're going to put our gunshot sound under sound effects as well. And so even though this is just a single asset, whereas our footsteps is a meta sound composed of 10 different footsteps, because we have access now to this modulation, we'll be able to control both the footsteps and the gunshot sound all on the same fader. Now, last but not least, we are going to add this also to our soundscape. And as I mentioned, the different soundscape colors are actually composed of meta sounds that I created. So what we need to do is go into each of the meta sounds. And I'm just going to go ahead and open all of these up so we can kind of do them fairly quickly. And we're just going to do the exact same thing that we've been doing with all of our other meta sounds. Now, because I'm using the ambience slider for our soundscape, I want to make sure that that is the control bus that I'm putting on the meta sounds used for our soundscape. So if we want to hear how this sounds and make sure that we are controlling these parameters correctly, what we can do is we can hit play, and I've got the soundscape playing. I've also got some music playing. There aren't any sound effects playing yet because, like I said, those are all footsteps and the gunshot sounds. But what we can do is in our control bus mix, if we hit activate mix, we can now use these sliders. So say I want the music to come down. I'm adjusting just the music, and under our ambience, I can adjust the volume of those as well. And as you can hear, even though our soundscape was made up of 5 different colors and 5 different meta sounds, we adjusted the volume of all of them at the same time. Now, it is important to note that if you come in here and you change things, it does throw the little asterisks up there saying that this isn't saved. You will want to revert these changes if you're going to be using like a UI menu to allow the user to be able to control these types of effects. But otherwise, if we were to click save now and then the player started playing the level, they wouldn't hear the ambience or the music because in the mix, we've saved it as the volume being all the way down. So you will want to revert those if you're going to be giving your user access to be able to control volume via like an options menu or something. But as I mentioned previously, we do want to allow the user interface to be able to control these. So there's a little bit of work that we need to do inside our level blueprint. Now inside the level blueprint, I do already have some stuff set up. I've got this set up for our menu, and I've got some custom events run for the faders. We just don't have them controlling any of the control bus parameters just yet. The other thing that I have down here is activating our soundscape. So the very first thing that we need to do is we need to actually activate the control bus mix. So you can do this however you want to execute it. If you want it on the event begin play, or if you want the user to be able to control when and when they cannot adjust parameters, which probably won't be something that you would want to set up, but you know, you can if you want. I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to drag off of the sequence node that I made, and we're going to activate the control bus mix. And we want to make sure that we're selecting our control bus mix so that this knows what control bus mix we're actually activating. You can have multiples if that suits your project, but for this one, we're just going to be using one. Now, before you guys say anything, yes, I know that activating the control bus mix off of this particular sequencer is going to make sure that it's activated third. You can obviously change your workflow and signal process however you want. There's a good chance that this is going to activate before your user is able to get in the menu and start messing around with this stuff. So for the example, it's fine. If you want to kind of refine this in your project, again, you're more than welcome to do so. And so now for our custom events, we want to define which part of the control bus mix we're changing the value of based on these custom events, which I have set up in the UI this will trigger anytime a value is changed. And so what we want to do is we want to set up the control bus, and we're looking for set control bus mix by filter. And we want to, under the mix, we want to make sure that we're targeting that control bus mix that we created. And we're going to drag off of here and go into the value. This is going to pass the value from that slider, which I currently have set to from 0 to 1. And then we're going to pass that into the control bus mix. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste these over, because we're also going to be using here as well. And what's going to set these apart so that the blueprint understands which parameters we're trying to change for which control bus we're trying to do. This is where the address filter comes in. And this is also where it's important that we remember exactly what we named those individual control buses. So the one for music, I had named that control bus, or CB_MUS. The sound effects was CB_SFX. And for our ambience, I had named that CB_AMB. So now we can go ahead and compile that, save it. And I mean, you're more than welcome to pause this and look at how I have my UI set up. I will say one thing of note, that when I originally set this up, I had my P key set to add it to the viewport. And when it was pressed again, it was removing it from the viewport. Doing it this way, removing it from the viewport, will actually reset all of your faders back to whatever their default position is. So the mix will stay the same. And let's say, for example, on the music, we were playing, we pulled the slider down, we only wanted it about half volume for our music, closed the menu, and we reopened it. The music would still be at half volume, but the slider will have reset back to the default because we had removed it from the parent, and now we're re-adding it again. So instead, we always want it to be active, But basically what we're doing is we're setting the visibility. And if you don't want to do it this way, you will need to figure out a way to kind of pass those values that you set into a variable and then reload those variables when you pull the menu back up. Not something that I'm going to be going into in this video, but just kind of wanted to let you know one of the pitfalls that I found. So in case you run into that, you can do so there. But we do have these all set up now. And so our sliders are now activating the control bus mix, or it's going to the control bus mix. Our address filter lets this node know which parameter or which mix stage we're going to be controlling. And our float value is what's going to be adjusting this value right here. And so we should actually now be all set up. So now we can go in here and I'll hit play. And I've got the menu set up to the P key. And so now with our music, I can bring the music down and our ambience as well. I can now control that. I'll hit P again. And now all we should hear is the gun firing and the sound effects for the footsteps. Now, I haven't done any preemptive mixing for these individual assets so that, let's say the player kept all the values at 100%. I haven't set up a proper mix for that since this is just a tutorial. But as you can hear, we have the footsteps, we've got the gunshots, and if we come back in here to our menu and we pull that slider down as well, now you can hear that we don't have any of that. All right, so that is going to wrap things up for this video. I do apologize if I've left anything out. I'm trying to wrap this video up before the thunderstorm knocks my power out. But if there is anything that I left out or anything that you want to know more information about, please let me know in the comments, and I'd be more than happy to do my best to try and help you figure that out. Or again, you can join the Sound Effects Guy Discord server using the link in the description below. Until next time.